Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. Tonight, take a second to think about what a Republican-controlled House has looked like for this country. Now imagine what a Republican-controlled Senate would look like, with Ted Cruz basically calling the shots. Well, that is the scary reality Democrats are facing right now. Today, barely 24 hours after Senate Democrats met with the president to talk about strategy, Democrats are ringing the alarm. Obama's former campaign manager, David Plouffe, tweeted, "Two brothers are attempting to purchase the U.S. Senate. Voters and candidates just mere chess pieces in this game of self-interest." And this is the number that everyone is freaking out about. According to the Washington Post, as of this week, Americans for Prosperity, a group largely funded by the Koch brothers, has spent more than $27 million on ads since August, 9 months away from Election Day. And $27 million may not seem like a huge number to you, but here's a little comparison. So far, the Democratic Senate Majority PAC has spent just $2.75 million on ads responding to AFP, 1/10 of what AFP has spent. In 2010, AFP spent nearly $40 million total on the midterms. So far, they have already spent $27 million with 3/4 of a year to go. And their goal is very simple: to turn the Senate red.
Kay Hagan, she just doesn't get it.
Tell Senator Landrieu we deserve better than Obamacare. Call Congressman Peters and tell him Obamacare isn't working. It's hurting Michigan families.
Obamacare doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Tell Senator Pryor to stop thinking about politics and start thinking about people.
Today, the Senate is just six seats away from turning Republican, and Democrats are shouting a warning that incumbents and candidates are already getting absolutely hammered in their local markets. Right now, there are 6 open seats, meaning a senator is retiring. 3 of those senators are Democrats in red states, and those are just the open seats. There's a handful of vulnerable Democrats like Mary Landrieu of Louisiana and Kay Hagan of North Carolina. Americans for Prosperity is going after almost all of them with millions of Koch dollars in their pocket. They spent $1 million against Representative Gary Peters, who's running for retiring Senator Carl Levin's seat in Michigan. And today they announced a $610,000 ad buy against the very vulnerable Democrat Mark Pryor for his support of Obamacare. Here's the problem with the flood of big money. It is going largely unanswered by Democrats. The Post reports AFP has spent over $1.7 million so far on ads just against Senator Mary Landrieu. Senate Majority PAC has spent less than $650,000. Americans for Prosperity has spent $7.2 million, a staggering number, running ads against incumbent Senator Kay Hagan, North Carolina. Democratic Super PAC has spent only $1.4 million in her race, less than a quarter of what AFP has spent. And yesterday, the Democrats' biggest super PAC, Priorities USA, announced they would be sitting out midterms. Every year and every election cycle since Citizens United, we have seen new frontiers of big money open up. We have watched donors get increasingly more innovative, and in this case, early in how and when they pump money into races. Now, in 2012, with the Obama fundraising juggernaut in place, things came out about even. It does not look like that will happen this year. The picture emerging 9 months out is that organizations funded largely by the Koch brothers are overwhelming Democrats across the country. They're trying to buy this election, and they are doing it in plain sight. Joining me now is Congressman Gary Peters, Democrat from Michigan. He's been on the receiving side of some of those ads. Are you surprised by how much money there has been this early, this negative?
There's no question, Chris. It's it's unprecedented to have that kind of ad come in against me. We had over $1 million buy, and you're talking 9.5 months from an election. So if you've got $1 million buy now, you can imagine that those buys are going to continue for the next 9 months. Are going to continue to get hammered by these ads, and quite frankly, the information they're putting out as well is complete misinformation and sometimes outright lies. And it's very difficult to try to counter that unless you have $1 million yourself to counter it.
You know, it occurred to me, I was sitting in my office today watching ad after ad from Americans for Prosperity, almost all of them about Obamacare. And a kind of light bulb went off, which is that these ads have been running around the country actually for 2 years. I mean, they spent a bunch of money in 2013. It's got to be having an effect on how the law itself is being perceived by people. There is so much negative advertising about the law. Forget the candidates attached to it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And as I mentioned, it's misinformation about it as well. In fact, on the plane tonight coming back home here to Michigan, I spoke with a lady who was pretty clear she had talking points down, but didn't understand how the law actually helps people. Once I had an opportunity to explain it to her, she had a completely different view of it. But it's difficult for me to have those one-on-one conversations with enough people when you've got multi-million-dollar ads putting out misinformation day after day.
In 2012, there was a lot of alarms being rung on this same issue, and they were coming from David Axelrod and all sorts of folks around the Obama campaign. When all was said and done, at the end of 2012, the money actually came out about even when you totaled all the disclosed money and the dark money and the big money, the super PAC money. What's to say this isn't the same thing here? I mean, that this is essentially fake alarm to try to shake the donor tree.
Well, it's the only way we're going to be able to combat that is that we do need to have smaller donations. We need the people engaged in the process. Certainly, we know when the president ran, we had a lot of small donors all across America that was helping out, standing up to basically 2 billionaires or a handful of billionaires that were paying for these ads. We're going to need to have that same kind of energy of regular, everyday folks who are going to get up and say, we are not going to let a couple individuals distort democracy and buy elections. They're going to have their voice heard, and if it's a $10 contribution, a $20 contribution, that adds up because there are more people out there than there are billionaires. We've got to make sure that that power is exercised.
Okay, but in the final analysis, wouldn't you also take a few Democratic millionaires pouring a bunch of money into a super PAC that could run ads going after your opponent?
Well, certainly that would be great, but I also believe very intensely that we've got to have a democratic system that's based on transparency. To me, what is the most important part of all of this is that we have a transparent government, one that people trust, one that people respect. And if we just let other billionaires fight it out, then candidates like myself who are running for the Senate, we're just horses with billionaires that are backing one horse or the other. I don't want to be part of that process. I want to be part of a process where everyday Americans have a say in their government, and people here in Michigan have a say as to who's going to represent them in the United States Senate. This shouldn't be out-of-state billionaires that are controlling the dialogue. It should be Michiganders that are controlling the dialogue for the Michigan U.S. Senate seat.
It occurs to me that each election we see, each campaign post-Citizens United, we see these innovations. The money that we're talking about right now isn't dark money in the sense of we know these are super PACs that are filing with the FEC. There is money that is even harder to trace and track than this money that we have right now. And the kind of iceberg that's underneath the water of dark money, that's only going to grow in this election.
Yes, absolutely. It's going to continue to grow, and we'll see the impact that it has on the midterm. You're right talking about a presidential year. You've got a lot of people engaged. You have really high turnout. It's a completely different dynamic in the midterm. A lot of folks don't show up to vote, and that's why it is going to be so critical that regular, everyday folks understand that it's important not just to help out candidates with maybe sending $10, $20, but they have to go to the polls. The one good thing about this system in America is that even if you're a billionaire and have a lot of money, you only get one vote when you go into the ballot booth. We've got to have folks coming out.
As of now, that's true. You never know what the Supreme Court's going to do. Congressman Gary Peters, thank you so much.